Chapter 162. The endless hallway darkness filled his sight, and there wasn't a single sound around him. At the same time, Jury felt a wave of cold air. The half-closed game pod had its own cooling system. Players could choose to turn it on or off, and in some games it could adjust automatically. Be careful, that gap in the door, it's another parallel reality. I am me, but are you sure you're the only you? 2 lines of text appeared in front of Jury, leaving him a little confused. But before he could think too much about what those words meant, the game screen appeared. The game began with the main character waking up on the cold ground. Paired with the cooling effect of the VR pod, Jury shivered without meaning to. And as he shivered, the game screen also shook slightly. A very lifelike cockroach crawled past in front of him, making the corner of Jury's mouth twitch. Even though he was a tall guy at 1.85 meters, cockroaches, spiders and bugs like that always made his skin crawl. It wasn't that he was scared, it was just that they were too disgusting. At that moment, the tightly shut wooden door in the room suddenly creaked open by itself. Jury didn't feel much about it. After all, this was just the beginning of the game, and this kind of scene wasn't rare, so he stayed calm. He looked around. The starting point of the game was a pitch-black room with bare cement walls, like an unfinished building. Directly ahead was a wooden door slightly ajar, and above the doorway hung a single light bulb. But the light it gave off was weak and pale. He didn't rush forward. Instead, Jury tried a few controls first. He found he could only do basic actions: walking, moving his hands for simple motions, and crouching. Things like crawling, jumping, or running didn't work, which clearly meant the game didn't include those features. There was no UI or system prompts either, but Jury wasn't surprised. After all, this was just a demo for testing, not a finished game. He hoped the later parts would be more intense and interesting. For now, he was still relaxed. Pushing the door open, he stepped into a narrow hallway. It was only wide enough for 2 people to walk side by side, and there were light bulbs on the walls and at the far end. But the reach of the lights was strangely short. Where the bulb hung, it was bright. Everywhere else was very dim. The sharp contrast between brightness and darkness made the whole scene feel eerie. Jury also noticed the murals on the walls. Some were clear, while others were made to look so blurred that he couldn't tell what they were supposed to show. And thanks to the big jump in performance of the new VR hardware, the game's realism was much higher than before. With graphics this real, paired with the creepy setting, the tension immediately shot up. But as a carefully chosen tester, Jury had seen a lot of big scenes before. He only paused for a moment, looked around, then kept moving forward. Halfway down the hall, on the right side, there was a small alcove with a table inside. On top sat a digital clock showing the time, 23:59. Above it on the wall were several blurry pictures. One of them seemed to show a U-shape with a black dot in the middle. It looked very strange. Next to the table's corner were piles of empty liquor bottles, hinting that the owner of the place was a heavy drinker. Nothing seemed especially important. But still, there was something unsettling about it. Mostly because it was way too quiet. Every step he took echoed on the floor, sounding like it was hitting directly on his chest. That silence, broken only by his footsteps, made the whole experience feel oppressive. After making sure the digital clock wasn't special, Jury kept moving along the hallway. Soon he reached the end of the hall, where it turned a corner. Past the corner, there was still another narrow hallway. On the left side stood a wooden cabinet, messy and cluttered. There was a broken-looking phone, what seemed to be a photo of the house's owner with his wife, and a table covered in white pills. It was a complete mess. Just like before, Jury didn't notice anything unusual and kept walking forward. At the corner was a locked door that couldn't be opened. Up ahead, a big door stood wide open, leading down to what looked like a basement. On the left side was a coat rack, and on the right were a photo of the couple who owned the house, a radio, and a pile of cigarette butts. Above him, the second floor hung a dimly lit chandelier. As he got closer, a burst of static came from the radio, which slowly turned into a clear voice. It sounded like a news report. The day of the murder, the father walked to the trunk of his car, pulled out a shotgun, and shot his wife, who was cleaning the kitchen after lunch. When his 10-year-old son came to check on the noise, the father shot him too. His 6-year-old daughter smartly hid in the bathroom, but reports say the father told her it was just a game, tricked her into coming out, and then shot her in the chest at point-blank range. The wife who was killed was also pregnant at the time. When police arrived after neighbors called, they found the father sitting in his car listening to the radio. Days before the murder, neighbors said they often heard the father loudly repeating a string of numbers, almost like he was chanting some strange spell. Last month, in the same state, there was another family shooting, and one in December as well. A man killed his whole family with a shotgun and a meat cleaver. In every case, the killer was the father. State police say these family tragedies seem unrelated, though they might be tied to common problems like unemployment, raising kids, or other social issues. Standing still for a moment, jury picked up a lot of key information from the radio. Could this house be the same one from that murder case, and was he playing the role of the killer father? Jury glanced around, same as before, nothing strange at all. Still, he couldn't shake a nervous feeling inside. It felt like something might jump out at him any moment. But so far, nothing scary had happened. He remembered playing Lucas's Outlast back then, which gave him plenty of jump scares. But those were just sudden shocks. This demo, Silent Hill PT, gave him a totally different kind of fear. It wasn't only because it was in VR, but because of the heavy, suffocating atmosphere of the whole game. Taking a deep breath, Jury tried to push aside all those distracting thoughts and focus on the test in front of him. He moved forward step by step, slower than an old man strolling in the park. He passed through the open door, went down the stairs, opened another door, and froze. What he saw looked way too familiar. It was the same hallway from the start of the game. He had come back. 2 lamps stood one behind the other. The blurry painting still hung on the left wall, and the digital clock read 23:59. Was this looping? A chill ran through Jury's whole body. So far, the game's entire setting had been nothing but this hallway. Other than the cockroach at the start, nothing else had moved, yet it already filled him with a sense of pressure and creeping panic. End of the chapter, it felt like repeating the same actions as before, moving forward bit by bit. But this time, something felt different. Jury wasn't sure if it was just his imagination, but the lights ahead seemed darker. And there were faint scratching noises echoing from nowhere, along with a sharp creaking sound that made his teeth hurt. Walking through the hallway, Jury felt as if someone was silently following him, whispering right into his ear. There are ghosts ahead, ghosts behind, ghosts above, ghosts everywhere in this house. But no one knows when or where one will jump out. The first half of the hallway was still exactly the same, but when he reached the radio area, 2 cockroaches suddenly fell from above, making him stop in his tracks. The chandelier above creaked loudly on its own, though there was no wind. From here he could see the railing of the 2nd floor. Could it be? Goosebumps ran over his skin. Jury took a deep breath and slowly looked up toward the 2nd floor. However, the 2nd floor was pitch black, with nothing there except the railing. Seeing this, Jury let out a breath, but the tight string in his heart didn't relax at all. For a moment, he even wished a monster would show up, then at least he'd have something to go on. He walked forward slowly to the door at the end and reached out to open it. But it seemed locked. He twisted the handle twice, and it only clicked without turning. Not letting me go any further, do I have to go back? Thud, thud, thud. While Jury was still thinking, a burst of door banging came from the door around the corner. The sudden loud banging in the quiet made him jump. That's a normal reaction. When he walked up to the door, whatever was inside seemed to sense someone at the entrance and stopped hitting it. Silence returned. If you can bang the door, then open it if you dare. Jury tried the handle again, but just like before, it wouldn't open. Clearly this wasn't the right path. He was getting more and more nervous, muttering under his breath as he faced these game moments, proof of his tension. Heading back along the loop, he found a photo on the floor in front of the digital clock, but it was so blurry he couldn't read it. He instinctively crouched to see it clearly, and then 3 lines of text appeared on the once blurry photo. Can you hear my voice? Can you read this message? If you come to find me, I will wait for you forever. Creak. Right after he finished reading and stood up, he heard the sound of a door opening. Thinking of the 3 lines on the photo, his heart began to pound fast. The door opened. Could it be the one someone was banging on earlier? Did the monster come out? With that guess, Jury braced himself and headed back down the hall. But nothing happened along the way, no jump scare at all. And just like before, the more nothing happened, the more nervous he felt. The door at the corner wasn't open, only the door leading to the basement stairs had opened again. He went forward, opened the basement door, and as he expected, behind it was the same long hallway as at the start. But this time was different. Up ahead it looked much the same, but when he reached the corner, a rapid knocking started, and then from the shut room came the cry of a baby. Don't tell me this door can open now. Jury felt his scalp tingle. But when he tried it again, it was still locked. He moved on, starting yet another loop. Please, I'm begging you, whatever you are, just come out already. Give me a jump scare if you must. Jury was already spooked. No game had ever made him feel this stifled. Up to now, not even one truly disturbing scene had appeared. Yet the fear clung to his heart and wouldn't go away. Strictly speaking, since he entered the game, all he had done was walk this hallway, run from the entrance to the end, then repeat. At most there were some different sound effects in between, but this kind of extreme monotony brought heavy mental pressure. It's a very smart kind of psychological suggestion that keeps you scared all the time. Think about it, a strange hallway, you're the only one awake, and you're stuck in a loop like hitting an invisible wall. But then strange things slowly happen, letting you know you're not alone in this room, or rather that maybe you're the only human, surprised, caught off guard. The key is you don't even know what those people with you really are. Human imagination is endless, that's why the unknown is the most terrifying. In most horror games, a scare is like a bullet already fired. When it hits you, you scream in pain. But in the Silent Hill series, the fear is like a time bomb covered with a cloth. You can hear the ticking, but you never know when it will explode. It pushes your limits step by step, makes your blood pressure rise, and your heartbeat speed up. Outside the research lab, the technicians were watching Jury's data in real time. Heart rate and blood pressure are rising again. There's still some distance before the safety limit. The tech staff and medical team kept monitoring his physical data as it came in. Beside them, Quinn and Felix looked at each other and swallowed hard. As test staff, they also knew what those numbers meant. It's only been a few minutes. Has it even been 10 minutes? How did he get this scared already? What's in this game? To keep the tester unfamiliar with the test content, they could only see Jury's data. As for the test demo itself, it was completely hidden from them. Meanwhile, in another room, a group of designers were sitting together. Some of the timid ones had unknowingly huddled close to others. Lucas glanced at Marcus sitting next to him and quietly moved a little farther away. At that moment, one of the designers finally couldn't hold back and spoke. Can someone turn on the lights? It's too dark, I can't see clearly. Once someone spoke up, the others joined in right away. Yeah, turn the lights on. This dim lighting is bad for our eyes. Right, he's got a point. And can we turn off the AC? Does anyone else feel cold? Yes, it's only May. We don't need the air conditioning at all. As they watched the live feed of the Silent Hill PT test on the big screen, the designers kept finding small things to talk about. Especially Marcus, he was extremely relieved right now. Good thing the VR gear was only for the tester, otherwise he wasn't sure if he'd survive the scare. The other designers felt the same. They all had to admit one thing, the game Silent Hill PT could only be described as stunning. So far there hadn't even been a single real scare, yet the atmosphere, the visuals, lighting and sound, had already pulled everyone deep into fear. When the real scares appear, what will it be like? They were just watching on a screen, not even in VR and in a group, and they already felt waves of fear washing over them. So what must the tester be feeling right now? End of the chapter. Jury had no idea if the others were scared. Right now, he was completely frozen. He had just entered a new loop again. From the locked room around the corner, the sound of a crying baby grew louder and louder. Wah. But when he reached the wooden door at the end of the hallway, the door that was open before suddenly slammed shut by some invisible force and locked tight. The baby's crying stopped instantly. Now the only sound was the creaking of the hanging lamp swaying above, making that sharp squeaking noise that grated on his nerves. And then a creak came from behind him. The door where the baby had been crying earlier, it sounded like it had just opened. Staring at the wooden door in front of him, Jerry didn't dare turn around. Based on the earlier radio broadcast he heard on his first trip down this hallway, he already had some guesses. That baby crying, could it be the child who was murdered? And that sound of the door opening, could it be the pregnant wife killed by her husband? Was she standing right behind him now? What does she look like? Thinking about this sent a chill through his whole body. He stood there for about 10 seconds, took 2 deep breaths, and then turned around in a flash. But everything was dead quiet, not a sound, nothing moved. Seeing that, Jerry let out a small sigh of relief. So now it's the next stage. Can I go inside this room now? Looking at the half-open door, he walked forward slowly, still guessing in his head. The moment his hand touched the doorknob, a white figure suddenly appeared through the crack of the door. A pale, ghastly face stared straight at him, and with a loud bang, the door slammed shut. Holy shit. Just like the story of the man who loved dragons but feared the real thing, the amazing horror atmosphere of Silent Hill PT had already made Jerry so nervous that he even thought, if I really see a ghost, then fine, at least I'll know what killed me. But after suddenly seeing this, he couldn't handle it at all. His innocent vocal cords also suffered under pressure that no one should have to bear. You mean I can still keep playing this game? Am I really that strong mentally and brave? Jerry swallowed hard as he stared at the game screen still going on. Before, during other tests, some people had their sessions stopped because of certain elements and were told to take a break. At that time, Jerry thought that was the sign of a weakling. But now, he had never wanted so badly to be one of those weaklings. Because the pressure this game was putting on him was way too much. Whether it was the graphics, the sound effects, or the lighting, Lucas had pushed the horror atmosphere to the absolute limit. Jerry just couldn't understand why such an underworld kind of game existed in the world of the living. Could a normal person really make a game like this? Staring at the tightly closed bathroom door, Jerry took a deep breath. At that moment, the door that had been locked at the end of the hallway opened again, and its meaning was obvious. It meant he could step into the next endless loop. The only good news was that Jerry could now confirm that the female ghost in the game was the same victim mentioned on the radio earlier. He went through the basement door again, and the scene beyond it was still the same as before. But Jerry, being observant, noticed that there were more cockroaches in the house now. And what made him feel even stranger was that the baby's crying sound had been replaced by a woman's voice. Ha ha aha mizu. It was a chilling sound, not quite a laugh, not quite a cry, and filled with a heavy bubbling tone. It felt just like someone's throat being choked, with saliva stuck inside while groaning in pain. As he moved forward, the light grew dimmer, and the woman's voice got louder. At the corner, Jerry's body gave a slight shiver. Because under the distant light stood a tall female ghost whose face was hidden. At that moment, Jerry felt as if a giant hand had gripped his heart. He took a deep breath, gritted his teeth, and walked straight toward her. The unknown is the scariest thing. Why was he so afraid before? Wasn't it just because he didn't know there was a female ghost? Wasn't it just because he didn't know when she would appear or what she looked like? Now that the ghost was standing right in front of him, what was there to be scared of? But the moment Jerry stepped forward, his heart sank, just like the light in front of him that suddenly went out. Courage rises once, fades the second time, and is gone the third. The ghost vanished into the darkness again. The bravery he had just gathered leaked away before he could even use it, and that old fear of the unknown returned. It was even worse this time, because now he knew there was a female ghost in the house, but he didn't know where she was hiding to watch him. Behind him, above him, behind him again, inside the closet, in the small bathroom, it felt like she could be anywhere. Jerry shuffled forward like an old lady crossing the street. The ghost's gurgling voice kept sounding, making his skin crawl, until he reached the spot where she had been standing earlier. Only then did the lights come back on. When the lights flashed on, countless cockroaches scattered, making Jerry's scalp tingle. He swallowed hard and stepped through the basement door once again. Now he finally figured out something about this Silent Hill PT demo. Every time the loop repeats, something creepy happens in the hallway. So what would change this time? The first half of the hallway was still the same as before, but after the turn, Jerry noticed that the bathroom door, which had always been closed, was now open. Taking a deep breath, Jerry walked into the dark bathroom and found a faintly flickering flashlight on the floor. It was obvious that in this pitch-black bathroom, the only way to see anything was with this flashlight. He swallowed again as he made the character slowly crouch down to pick it up. The moment he picked it up, there was a loud bang behind him. The bathroom door had slammed shut. At the same time, the faint sobbing of a baby returned. Following the sound, Jerry shone the flashlight toward it, and in the sink lay a deformed fetus that hadn't fully developed. The moment the light hit its body, the soft sobbing suddenly turned into a loud wail. Bangs, bangs, bang. At the same time, outside the door, Jerry clearly heard the sound of high heels approaching. He didn't even have time to react. Clang, clang, clang. The doorknob was being yanked wildly, and with the ghost woman pulling from outside, the bathroom door kept opening a crack. Through that gap, he could even see that pale figure outside. In the dark, the flashlight that was supposed to stay on started flickering again. The sound of the rattling doorknob outside, mixed with the cries of a baby, instantly broke down Jerry's mental defenses. Stop pulling, it has nothing to do with me, I'm begging you, let me go. The one who wronged you isn't me, it's your husband, isn't me. I didn't kill you, I didn't hurt the baby, stop pulling. In the game, Jerry controlled his character to crouch in the corner of the bathroom, rambling and shouting as a way to vent his fear. His voice even carried a hint of sobbing. At that moment, he swore that ever since he could remember, he had never been this scared in his life. Why hadn't the link to the VR capsule been forcefully cut yet? Was the function broken? Jerry's mind started running wild. Just when he felt like he was about to lose it completely, everything suddenly stopped. The baby's cries went silent, the ghost woman outside seemed to vanish, and the locked bathroom door opened a crack. Taking a deep breath, Jerry slowly poked his head out and stepped forward. Everything seemed to return to normal. He waited there for a while, but nothing happened. The only thing that stayed the same was that door leading to the next loop. It looked like an ordinary door, yet to Jerry it felt like the gaping jaws of a beast waiting to swallow him whole. Prosperity, democracy, civility, harmony, freedom. After hesitating a moment, Jerry softly recited the core values to himself as he stepped forward. End of the chapter. Passing through the basement door that marked the start of another loop, Jerry fell silent as he looked at the scene ahead. The hallway was still the same hallway, but something was different. Before, the lights were dim, but at least he could still see a little. Now, except for one lamp at the entrance, all the lights further down were completely out. So this is the price I pay for taking the flashlight. Jerry lowered his head to look at the flashlight in his hand, then looked at the pitch-black hallway ahead, swallowing hard. And then, the radio that had been quiet all this time came back on, once again reporting the massacre news from the start. But the voice was broken and full of static, and with the darkness around him, it made everything even creepier. It's nothing, just darker than before, Jerry whispered to himself, taking cautious steps forward. Step by step, aside from the static of the radio, there didn't seem to be anything else. Except his footsteps sounded a little off. But at this moment, Jerry didn't think too much. He just whispered the core values under his breath, hoping it would drive away the fear in his heart. When he reached the corner of the hallway, he let out a small breath of relief, his tense nerves loosening just a bit. Because right ahead, next to the radio, there was actually light. Although it was dim. He glanced at the bathroom door. At this time, it was tightly shut. Jerry tried turning the knob, but it wouldn't open. And the baby's crying and the ghostly sobbing were gone. As he got closer to the radio, he noticed something different on the table. On the wedding photo that originally belonged to the house owner, a big X had been drawn over the bride's body. And there was a line of words written on it, "Dig it out." Seeing this, Jerry reached out to touch the photo. When his finger touched the right eye of the bride in the photo, that part of the picture was directly gouged out. Looking at the smiling face missing an eye, the black hole staring back at him, Jerry swallowed hard. The image was just too creepy. And just as he was about to move forward, the radio that had only been playing static suddenly became clear. "Don't touch that phone dial, we're just about to begin. And also, you can't trust the tap water." After saying those two sentences, the radio went back to static. "Don't touch the phone dial, don't trust the tap water." The phone, wasn't there a phone on the cabinet at the corner earlier? Why can't he touch it? Hearing this, Jerry instinctively turned his head to glance at the phone behind him. But the moment he turned, he immediately understood why. At that exact second, a pale shadow suddenly pressed right up against him. At the same time, the game's view shook violently. Then, a bloodless face suddenly pressed up close to his. This time, he finally saw the true face of the ghost he had been longing for. Her skin was deathly pale, her right eye an empty hole, clearly gouged out cruelly. Her left eye was almost all white, as if she had suffered something like suffocation torture while alive. Her mouth, full of yellow teeth, leaked pus-like liquid. The two of them were almost face to face. The sudden impact, combined with the fear and tension that had been building up all along, exploded at once. At that moment, Jerry's vocal cords carried everything he had bottled up. At the same time, the screen in front of him suddenly went black. He knew the game pod had cut him off from the game. Whether it was a staff member who cut the connection or the pod's self-protection, that didn't matter anymore. What mattered was he was finally free. As the pod opened right away, Jerry staggered as he stepped out. A staff member quickly supported him. "I'm fine, just my legs are a bit weak." Jerry took a deep breath. "Take a moment, it's just a game. Relax your breathing," the staff member comforted him. Meanwhile, Felix and Quinn, who had no idea what Jerry had just gone through in the test, exchanged a nervous look. They knew Jerry's ability well. So what on earth scared him this badly? "Let me take a break first, I really can't handle it." Jerry looked at the wide room and the crowd around him, and for a moment he even felt like crying. God knows how much pressure that cramped game environment had put on him. Then he glanced at the clock on the wall and froze. 20 minutes. That long, torturous experience inside the game had only lasted 20 minutes. Jerry, in this demo test, which parts or elements made you feel uncomfortable? A staff member came over, asking as usual. Hearing this, Jerry, still trying to calm down, couldn't help recalling what he had just gone through in the game. After hesitating a moment, he said, I feel like everything made me uncomfortable." Staff member. Looking at the confused staff member, Jerry could only give a helpless smile. Because that was truly how he felt. The realistic visuals, the detailed sound effects and lighting, and the oppressive packing of the game, it all came together into a complete, all-round feeling of discomfort. Hearing Jerry's words, the staff wrote pending in his notebook, then turned to Felix and Quinn. "Next, which one of you wants to go first?" Hearing this, Felix and Quinn exchanged a glance. With the unspoken understanding between co-workers, they both raised their hands at the same time. Rock, paper, scissors. Using the most old-fashioned way to decide who would go second in testing Silent Hill PT. In the bright hall, a group of game designers from the industry sat there. The big screen had already been turned off. Many of the designers didn't look too good, some even looked a little pale. Everyone was staring strangely at Lucas, who sat calmly to the side. God knows what those 20 minutes had just put them through. At first, they thought they had seen it all. What horror game hadn't they seen before? But Silent Hill PT, this simple demo, honestly amazed them. So many people and they were just watching, not even playing. It wasn't 3D or VR, just a simple big screen. Yet even so, the atmosphere in the game managed to shake some of them. "Lucas, how long is the demo?" about how much did we just see, and how much of it was horror content. Marcus asked a question everyone in the room was curious about. About 1/3 of the full thing. Even though it's a demo, I actually made the gameplay and content pretty complete. The puzzles, though, I did them a bit willfully. If you don't play it several times and really study it, it's pretty hard to clear. As for the horror parts, that look back scare is just like a starter dish. I didn't really put in that many jump scares in this demo. That look back scare isn't even the core. The real focus is on the story and the atmosphere of the setting. There are several key points later on. After all, this demo is mainly for the game division to test VR functions, so they can make improvements later, Lucas explained with a smile. Hearing Lucas's words, and remembering the scenes from earlier, everyone went speechless. This was just a starter dish. Holding it in for a long time, Marcus finally took a deep breath and said seriously to Lucas, "Lucas, we game developers, when we make games, it's fine to keep things grounded, but grounded shouldn't mean sending us all the way to the underworld." End of the chapter. All the designers had originally come today planning to ask about the new VR device, its specs, and some development features. But Silent Hill PT, the demo submitted by Lucas, completely wrecked their plans. And today, the research center welcomed a very special theme. That theme was screaming. When your emotions are unstable and you're scared, what's the best way to let it out? The answer is simple: scream. A grown man, a battle-tested tester. Yet he screamed out loud because of a test demo. For them, that was pretty embarrassing. So at first, even though Jerry was really scared, when he first ran into Lisa, the ghost, at the bathroom door, he just let out a reflexive yelp. It wasn't until later, when Lisa got up close and personal, that he finally let go of himself. Overwhelmed by that emotional impact, he followed his instincts and screamed out with all he had. And when Quinn and Felix had their turn, they finally understood what this game really was. This shouldn't even be a game meant for the living. The only small comfort they had was that Jerry had already gone first and let himself go. That took the pressure off them. They too could scream to let out their fear. For a while, the whole research center was filled with screams like pigs being slaughtered. After resting for quite some time, Jerry went back in, thinking he could face it more bravely this time. After all, at the end of the day, it's still just a horror game. Once a player gets familiar with a horror game, the fear gets weaker and weaker. But once he entered again, Jerry realized he had been overthinking, or maybe only half right. It's true that once you're familiar, the fear lessens. But the key problem was, he wasn't familiar yet. The only thing he knew was what the ghost looked like. Everything else, completely unknown. He didn't even know if there were other monsters in the game. He thought he had played pretty far in, but reality hit him hard. The game entered the other world. After passing through the door again, faint water sounds came through his ears. The lights turned into a dark red glow. The chandelier that had been hanging from the ceiling was replaced by a huge refrigerator. The fridge swung back and forth in the air, and the red glow came from countless streams of blood inside it, reflecting outward. In this part, the game also introduced its first creepy music. A loud baby's cry echoed from inside the fridge. Together with the static-filled radio noise, you could faintly hear a line. After killing his family, the father hanged himself in the garage with a rubber hose umbilical cord. Looking up at the fridge hanging from the ceiling, blood poured out, splattering straight onto the player's face. The sudden sound of high heels behind, matched with the atmosphere, pushed the tension of the game to its peak. In that kind of mood, with Lisa's twisted figure suddenly leaning in for a face-to-face kiss, the testers at the research park couldn't help but let out sharp screams. After leaving the research institute, Lucas finally felt a bit more relaxed. He thought the Silent Hill PT demo should help the testers give more useful feedback for improving the VR device. And judging from their reactions, it looked like they wouldn't be beating this demo anytime soon. As for the new VR device itself, Lucas was still very interested. From the experience alone, it really was a step above the old VR devices. But sadly, it would still be hard to put it on the market in the short term. While Lucas was thinking, his phone rang. The call was from David, the head of game division. "Minister David, what's the matter?" Lucas asked after answering. "It's nothing serious, just letting you know that the subsidy should arrive in your account by next Monday. Also, this demo you made is very valuable for testing. But Lucas, if you plan to make VR games in the future, especially horror games for the public, you really need to take it easy," David said with a very complicated expression on the other end. He had already learned about the contents of Silent Hill PT. How should he put it? It was just too unusual. The key point was that there weren't even many bloody scenes in the whole game. The only disturbing part was probably the baby fetus in the bathroom. That meant even without being just a test demo, Silent Hill PT could fully pass content review standards. But if this game was really released to the public, combined with VR devices, he didn't even dare to imagine it. Because then it wouldn't be professional testers playing it, but regular players. This wasn't making a game for players, this was pushing players out the door. How many could really handle it? I think Minister David's right. Lucas, if you actually put Silent Hill PT on the market, you'd probably scare away more than half the players. Marcus joked after Lucas hung up and told them about the call. It's not that extreme, it's mainly because the new VR is so immersive. Both the visuals and the sound are just too real, Lucas sighed. A horror game's fear doesn't only come from shocking images. Sound is just as important. Take Outlast's Mount Massive Asylum as an example. When the player stands in front of the gloomy hospital gates, the building in the distance looks like a giant beast in the dark, pressing down on them. But if at that moment they suddenly heard a comedy skit in their ears, the whole effect would be gone. And the other way around, if the sound was dark and heavy, but Mount Massive Asylum was replaced by sunny Bikini Bottom, it'd be hard to feel scared at all. That's true, Marcus nodded in agreement. But horror games rarely achieve huge sales, Marcus sighed. That's right, Lucas nodded. That's why horror has always been considered a niche genre. Too scary and players don't dare play alone, so even if it's praised, sales stay low. But if it's not scary, then it's not a horror game at all. But the design of Silent Hill PT really taught us designers a lot, especially that looping hallway that traps you, the tight spaces, and Lisa's deadly turnaround. Just thinking about it now still gives me chills, Marcus said with feeling. It's mainly because this is just a demo, so I could really go all out, Lucas said with a smile. It's a pity it can only be played on the new VR device. Otherwise, I'd really want to study your demo more, Marcus added with a laugh. No problem, if you want to try it, it's just a demo. Game Division already said there's no need for secrecy. I'll make a version for you when I get back, then we can study it together and you can give me some advice, Lucas replied. Marcus froze when he heard that. Wait, that's not what he meant. Marcus was stunned. He wanted to say something but stopped himself. He couldn't exactly admit he was a little too scared, could he? Lucas, really, that's not necessary, Marcus tried to decline. No need to be polite, Marcus. Making a PC version is easy. The materials are already there, it'd only take me 2 days, and it could also be a little gift for players, a nice surprise, Lucas smiled. Hearing that, Marcus fell silent. A surprise, he was sure about one thing, players were definitely going to be shocked. But you call this surprise? Let me thank you on behalf of the players. End of the chapter, May 7th, 4 days before the expo. While all the players were eagerly waiting for the Gameplay Expo to arrive, some fans who followed Lucas closely kept refreshing his official account every day, hopping to catch a glimpse of game news. And this time, they really found a post. Test demo Silent Hill PT is now available on Nebula Games platform. Interested players can download and try it for free. Many players were stunned by the news. What's going on? Wasn't Lucas just done making It Takes Two? And during this time, shouldn't he be focused on working on the prequel to Dark Souls? So why suddenly drop a demo out of nowhere? Is this a new game? But that doesn't make sense either. If it were a new game, shouldn't it be called a trial demo? What does test demo even mean? Players everywhere were curious. With that curiosity, many clicked into the Nebula Games platform to read the description. After seeing it, a lot of them went silent for a few seconds, then quickly bowed out. Because it turned out to be a horror demo. Even now, many players still remember Lucas's old work, Outlast, all too well. Even those who never played it themselves and couldn't find good streamers would still go back and watch Outlast. The Scream to Death videos on all the big platforms still pull in huge numbers. And now this new thing called Silent Hill PT is another horror game. But after reading the description carefully, many people got even more curious. Because the description made it very clear, this is not a full game, nor is it a teaser for one. Put simply, it's a demo made only for testing, built for Game Division to use with their new VR device. Besides the upcoming Gameplay Expo, the biggest news lately has been about this new VR hardware. Foreign companies started hyping it first, trying to set the stage and claim they were leading the way. At first, developers at home kept quiet and worked, but after that push, they couldn't just sit still anymore. So they also released some specs to the public. For normal players, this was just something to watch from afar. Nobody knew when it would really come out. And even when it did, for most people it would be too expensive, maybe something you could only try at a VR arcade. But for designers in the industry, this wasn't surprising. Everyone already knew Game Division had invited some top local designers to join their demo testing program. That news had already been leaked and covered by some media. And now it looked like Lucas was part of it too. This instantly stirred up heated debate among players and designers. Lucas finished a test demo that fast, he must have phoned it in. Come on, why would he? Game Division didn't force anyone, and Lucas still has the Dark Souls prequel to work on. If he didn't want to join, he could have just said no. I bet it's just a small-scale demo. No, I heard the demo has a lot of content, and it's really scary. Scary? How scary can it be? With the new VR system it might feel terrifying, sure, but on PC, how scary can it be? Honestly, anyone who doubted Outlast ended up crying in a corner. Don't exaggerate, Outlast was a full game. This is just a demo, not the same thing at all. Anyway, stop focusing only on Silent Hill PT. It's just a demo. Shouldn't we be more worried about the Dark Souls prequel? If Lucas spent time making Silent Hill PT, doesn't that mean the Dark Souls prequel is likely delayed? Damn, you're right. So at the expo, will we still get to play a demo of it? How should I know? And Lucas never said there'd be a demo at the expo anyway. He only promised new info. I can't take it anymore. No Dark Souls and I'll die. Come on, man. No Dark Souls, sure, but Lucas gave us a test demo, didn't he? Maybe we can at least catch a glimpse of the new VR features from it. You're overthinking it. The PC and VR versions won't feel the same. It might be super scary in VR, but on PC it probably won't hit as hard. At Nebula Games, Rachel, Anna, and Hector were also watching the online discussions. Their expressions were complicated as they read through the comments. Lucas, this warrior of love nickname of yours, I don't think you'll ever shake it off, Anna sighed. Exactly, Rachel nodded. Everyone was curious about Silent Hill PT when they first heard it was sent to Game Division as a VR testing demo. But since they couldn't experience the VR version, they used the same data to build a PC version instead, and finally, they got to feel that crushing sense of fear for themselves. Of course it couldn't compare to the VR version, but that was exactly why it felt even creepier to them. No way around it, this is also for the player's sake. Tell me, isn't Silent Hill PT an amazing demo even if it's short? With such great level design and puzzle elements, if players couldn't experience it, wouldn't that be a huge loss? Lucas said with a smile. Then he added, besides, look at this, players have already given us the perfect excuse for why we don't need a Dark Souls prequel demo. Hearing Lucas's words, everyone around the table fell silent. And if players respond really well, I think in the future we might consider making a more complete Silent Hill on the VR platform, not just a short demo, Lucas said, stretching lazily. A complete one on VR. Was he finally dropping the friendly act and showing his true side? Wouldn't that mean as many players as play it, just as many might get scared to death? At this rate, Nebula Games could just switch careers and open a Hitman company. While everyone was still speechless, the main theme of the gaming world in front of the Gameplay Expo had already shown up: screams. In households everywhere, countless players who tried Silent Hill PT all let out blood-curdling shrieks, like pigs being slaughtered. Yes, the PC version was much less intense than the high-immersion VR one. But compared to Kojima's PT in Lucas's past life, thanks to the tech of this parallel world, Lucas had made the visuals far more realistic. And visuals are the heart of a horror game. This made the PC version much more immersive than the original. As a result, most players quit the moment Lisa turned her head for the first time. A smaller group of players gave up earlier, just from the glimpse of Lisa peeking through the bathroom door crack. It couldn't be helped, it was too scary to keep going. Compared to Outlast, even though this was only a demo, many felt it was far scarier. It was just a game, yet playing it felt like risking their lives. And if the PC version was already this terrifying, then the VR version built for testing must be on another level. Even players who had never met the official testers started to feel sympathy for them after experiencing Silent Hill PT themselves. On the forums, players gathered to comfort each other and share their misery. Damn it, who was the idiot who said this demo wouldn't be that scary? I'll add a curse to your character. Exactly, unlike Outlast, which is full of jump scares, this demo only has one or two, but the constant pressure and dread, and then suddenly that one scare hit me so hard my poor heart nearly stopped. The crying baby in the bathroom, and then the ghost woman banging on the door, I literally pissed myself. The worst part is the graphics. Why the hell did Lucas spend so much budget on a demo? It's way too real, it's killing me. When the ghost turned her head like she wanted a kiss, I threw my mouse across the room. On the streaming platforms, many streamers were falling apart. When streaming Outlast before, they could at least move forward step by step. As long as they weren't scared off, it wasn't too hard to finish. And new areas gave them some comfort. Every new area meant they were closer to escaping. But this demo, Silent Hill, was only about half an hour long according to the description. The problem was, it was built around puzzles. If you couldn't solve them, you'd be stuck in the house forever, looping endlessly with Lisa. Though honestly, being stuck with Lisa meant having a wife, a kid, and a house. Kinda tempting, wasn't it? The only drawback, it really wears down your heart. End of the chapter. Since it was just a short demo, most players thought it wouldn't be a big deal and they'd clear it easily. But reality surprised everyone. Right before the Gameplay Expo, the game industry had little big news. Many studios were holding back until the event to reveal their projects. And so Silent Hill PT, the demo built for the new VR tests, became a hot topic for the media. Test demo Silent Hill PT has a day one clear rate of 1.76%. When many outlets reported this based on Nebula Games trophy data, even they were stunned. It had already been out for a full day. And judging from online discussions, tons of people were playing it. But not even 2% had cleared it. Was it because it was too hard? Or just too scary? Plenty of media outlets were curious. William from GameSpace nearly dropped his coffee when he saw the number. Since it was only a test demo, not many sites had reviewed it. But seeing the clear rate made him very curious. So out of curiosity, he opened the Nebula Games platform, downloaded the demo, and started playing. 10 minutes later, clutching his chest, William stood up from his chair, took a few deep breaths, and with shaking hands pulled open the curtains to let in the sunlight. Now he understood why the clear rate was so low. Which normal player could handle this? Of course, it's just scary, but honestly, quite a few players can still clear it. After all, this isn't the highly immersive VR version. PC players have plenty of tricks to make themselves less scared. Replacing the Ghost Girl models, let's not even talk about that. Because if that goes wrong, the horror game might turn into a shooter instead. But things like turning up the brightness, muting the sound and playing comedy shows or cheerful songs, or even having 3 to 5 guys sitting together holding hands to play, that all works right. The key point, though, is that the conditions to clear Silent Hill PT are actually really harsh. It wasn't until the next day that some hardcore players, after studying the game and discussing it on forums, finally figured out the conditions for clearing Silent Hill PT. And what shocked many players was that even though Silent Hill PT is just a demo, it actually tells a simple story. In the game's endlessly looping hallway, there are 14 loops in total, and each time you complete one, new story content is triggered. On the second loop, the game guides the player back to see a photo of the wife on the floor. When you pick it up, 3 lines appear. Can you hear my voice? Can you read this message? If you come to find me, I'll wait for you forever. This is the first hint in the game. In different corners of the room, there are photo fragments, 8 pieces in total, but 10 sentences in all. Every time you collect one piece, a sentence will appear in a random language. These 10 sentences are the key clues to finishing the game. Put together, they read. While I was waiting, I stayed still. I whispered his name. His fingertips brushed across my hand. His hand was so cold. My body trembled as I waited for it all to end. I didn't move at all. The hand reaching toward me slowly faded into the fog. I believe I heard a phone call. Every time the player is killed by the ghost Lisa, it means game over, which crashes and closes the game. But at this screen, there's a key piece of info, the protagonist's name, J. The deeper you go, the heavier and creepier the atmosphere becomes. And as the story unfolds, players learn how Lisa died. In one of the later loops, players can listen through a peephole into the bathroom. Based on the sounds, you can guess Lisa had her eyes gouged out, her throat slit, and her stomach cut open to remove the fetus. The bubbly sound in her voice earlier was because of the blood choking in her throat. As for why Lisa was killed, a mysterious low voice reveals it. You got fired, so you drank to drown your sorrows. She had to get a part-time cashier job at the corner store. The only reason she earned money there was because the manager liked her. You didn't forget, right, just 10 months ago. From this, you can guess why the main character killed Lisa. He believed she cheated on him, and the baby wasn't his. Once all the clues are gathered, in the final loop, you need to do 3 steps to finish the game. Step 1, do nothing and wait for 1 minute in front of the digital clock until it hits midnight. This matches the sentence from the photo clue. While I was waiting, I stayed still. Next, take 10 steps forward. You'll hear the baby's first laugh. At this point, you'll hear the sound of Lisa's high heels. Follow the sound, keep some distance, then speak the protagonist's name, Jay, into the microphone. This matches the photo clue. I whispered his name. Then Lisa rushes at the player and possesses you. At the same time, the screen starts to shake slightly. In VR, players can feel the vibration through the gaming pod's motors. On PC, if you use a controller, it vibrates. If you use a mouse and keyboard, the screen shakes instead. This matches another clue. His fingertips brushed across my hand. His hand was so cold. My body trembled. Then creepy music plays, but you still don't move, matching the next line. I didn't move at all. The hand reaching toward me slowly faded into the fog. When the music stops completely, the baby laughs a second time, and the hallway phone rings, confirming the last line. I believe I heard a phone call. Go to the phone and you hear a voice. You have been chosen. The door unlocks and the trophy for clearing the game pops up. After reading the walkthroughs that experts put together, countless players were shocked. This is way too strict. Especially the final steps, miss even one clue, and there's no way to guess all that. As soon as the pros posted the guides, discussions exploded online. I give up with conditions like this. Even if I played for a year, I'd never beat it. Bro, be more confident. You wouldn't beat it in a lifetime. You've only played for 0.1 hours. You're not clearing anything. 0.1 hours. You're giving him too much credit. That's just Nebula Games' default minimum time. He probably launched the game, took a quick look, and quit. How do I know? Because that's exactly what I did. I strongly suggest some energy drink brands sponsor this game. It's practically an extreme sport. Your death will be beyond imagination. Even though the walkthrough for the demo was out, discussions about Silent Hill PT didn't stop. And on streaming platforms, even with guides, streamers were still getting scared out of their minds. A simple demo, yet it gave countless players an unforgettable psychological shadow. Some players even joked that they were showing symptoms of PTSD. They didn't dare walk alone down the hallway at night to use the bathroom, afraid that when they opened the bathroom door, they'd find another endless hallway inside. If there's any news that could help players relax and put them in a good mood, it's probably that the gameplay showcase is finally starting this year. The prequel to Dark Souls that they've been waiting for will finally have more news. End of the chapter. At the 5th hall of the gameplay exhibition in Magic City, many staff members were busy working. Unlike last year, this year Nebula Games' booth was moved to the 3rd hall. After all, with Dark Souls, and It Takes Two under their belt, Nebula Games' reputation and size no longer make them look like an indie studio. As for Skynova and NetDragon, they each still have their own hall like last year. The third hall was mostly filled with mid-tier game studios. The booth sizes were fairly balanced, and Nebula Games' booth space was about the same as last year. Looks like these other game companies around us are taking us pretty seriously, Rachel said while setting up the booth. As soon as she said that, Anna replied, "Yeah, I feel like they're watching us closely. Some designers even came over earlier to fish for information." Mostly because Lucas stole the spotlight last year, Edward said with a grin. "But it feels like this year we're just here to show our faces. The only thing we can really show off is a teaser trailer for the Dark Souls prequel." Rachel sounded a little disappointed. Can't be helped, the schedule's too tight, and Lucas already released Silent Hill PT early. If he had saved it for this event, just imagine how hyped the players would have been, Anna said with a sigh. Nearby, some cosplayers practicing for their stage show stumbled when they heard that. Most of these cosplayers were gamers themselves, so of course they knew about the demo called the scariest in recent days, Silent Hill PT. Some hadn't downloaded it themselves, but they had seen it through gaming news, videos, or live streams. If that had been brought to this event, the players would have gone wild. While the team was still setting up, they saw Lucas and Hector coming from the entrance with a group of staff, pushing a small cart. "Hey Lucas, are these new cosplay props? They look so weird." "Yeah, what's up with this? Inflatable hammers, big water tank sofas, what is this stuff?" Seeing the props Lucas and Hector brought in, Anna, Rachel, and the others were full of curiosity. The props on the cart looked custom-made. There were 4 big black sofa-like things shaped like water tanks, about 80 centimeters tall, roughly up to Hector's thigh. Each sofa also had an inflatable sledgehammer, like the ones used on construction sites. Everyone stared at the strange sight, wondering what it was for. Took some time with Hector these past 2 days to make a little mini-game. We'll show it at the booth during the event. These props are for the game, to make it more immersive for the players, Lucas explained with a smile. Oh, I see, Rachel and Anna suddenly understood. But some people were curious about what kind of game Lucas had actually made. When Rachel and Anna asked him, Lucas just shrugged and smiled without saying a word. Meanwhile, Hector looked at the 4 big barrel-shaped seats and the 4 hammers in front of him, hesitating to speak. After thinking for a moment, Hector quietly walked over to the event staff and asked, "Can we get some extra security for our booth tomorrow? Players might get a little too excited." The security guard across from him, clearly a Dark Souls fan, looked at Hector's badge and immediately grinned. "No problem, I get it. The Dark Souls prequel demo, right? Of course players will be excited. It's been so long." Seeing the guard smiling with anticipation made Hector's expression even more complicated. "A demo, do we even have that? And what you think players getting excited means is nothing like what he's imagining." On the day of the event, just like last year, the Gameplay Expo was packed with people. A lot of local players from Magic City came, along with others who traveled from different cities, hoping to try out some new games. At the entrance, many players were chatting. This year, NetDragon and Skynova didn't have any major surprises. Aside from a few projects from third-party studios, there was nothing truly groundbreaking. Still, they remained the top choice for most players, mainly because they had a lot of games. As for Nebula Games, plenty of players headed straight for their booth too. After all, Lucas had already announced on the official blog that they would reveal new details about a sequel at the expo. On top of that, the recent buzz around Silent Hill PT Online had drawn even more attention to Nebula Games. Of course, there were also some loyal fans. "I wonder what Lucas is bringing this year," Zach said with anticipation. "Another game like Silent Hill PT," Hannah chimed in. "Anything's fine, just please don't make it a horror game," said Ben, a tall guy. "By the way, where are Wells and Joey this year?" Hannah asked curiously. "Joey broke his leg so he couldn't make it, and Wells is on a business trip this month, couldn't get time off," Ben explained. But as soon as Zach and the others reached Nebula Games' booth, they were stunned. There were just way too many people. The entire hall was packed. Even though security was keeping order and everyone queued up properly, the sheer number of people was overwhelming. From a distance, the stage seemed empty, except for some showgirls and cosplayers. But Zack and the others quickly realized why. Because right after the cosplayer performance ended, a familiar figure walked on stage. "Hello, everyone," Lucas grabbed the mic and greeted the crowd with a smile. The players waved back and cheered. Finally, Lucas is here. When are they going to announce the Dark Souls prequel? Was Silent Hill PT just a demo? The audience was buzzing with chatter. Lucas motioned for everyone to quiet down and continued, "I'm guessing most of you came here for this." As his words fell, the crowd erupted in cheers. On the big screen behind him appeared a familiar icon. The bonfire from Dark Souls with a spiral sword stuck in it. An armored undead, half kneeling before the bonfire, slowly came into view. As the footage played, the noise in the hall gradually faded, leaving only the background music from the speakers. But the video wasn't over yet, the fire kept burning. As the flames burned hotter, the image started to twist and blur. The undead kneeling on the ground slowly vanished. Eventually, everything turned into a white mist. The fire roared higher, and the mist spread across the entire screen. Then, in the middle of the audience's uncontrollable cheers, an aged voice spoke. End of the chapter. In the age before time, the world was unshaped, covered in fog, with endless grey stone, towering trees, and immortal dragons. The video showed a world of white fog, barren stone, and massive trees. In the mist, the shadow of a colossal dragon flashed by. But then the first flame was born, and everything changed. Heat and cold. Light and dark. Life and death. The screen quickly shifts, and in the darkness, sparks appear, gathering into a burning flame. That flame blazes fiercely, vast and powerful. Compared to the small spark scene at the end of Dark Souls linking the fire ending, this flame is like the sun itself. Then, some beings were born from the darkness. They were drawn to the flame, and around it they found the souls of kings. Before the fire, countless shadows rose from the ground, facing the flame. The first of the dead, Nito. In the endless dark, a massive skeleton rose, holding a flame in his hands. The Witch of Izalith and her Daughters of Chaos. A woman in a hooded robe lowered her gaze, staring at the flame in her hands. Lord Gwyn, the Sunlight Lord, and his army of knights. Crowned Gwyn also held the fire in both hands, his flame burning hotter than Nito's or the witch's. Behind him stood a vast legion of knights, ready for war. And the furtive pygmy, so easily forgotten. In the deserted land where the fire began, a shadowy figure rose, holding a weak flickering flame. That tiny flame seemed like it could be blown out at any moment. They took the power of the Lord's souls and challenged the everlasting dragons. Gwyn's lightning spears pierced the dragon's stone-like scales. The witch's firestorms burned the great trees to ashes. Nito unleashed a miasma of death. And Seath the Scaleless betrayed the everlasting dragons, leading to their downfall. The scene shifts again and again. Gwyn's lightning, the witch's fire, and Nito's deathly fog rained down on the skybound dragons. At last, Seath the Scaleless let out a roar, standing on mountains of dragon corpses. Thus began the Age of Fire, but fire fades and only darkness will remain. The grand royal city flashes into view, only to vanish into endless dark. After a moment, a faint flame flickers in the blackness, caught suddenly by a pair of hands. Now, as the fire fades, light can no longer touch the world, and the night stretches on without end. Before a desolate grave valley, a woman kneels, her figure instantly recognizable to anyone who played Dark Souls. It is the Fire Keeper. The cursed dark sign spreads among men. She places her hand on the body of a hollow knight. The camera pulls back, showing the brand of the dark sign. The scene shifts to a prison, where countless hollows are locked away. Yes, the dark sign marks the curse of the undead. All undead are captured, taken north, and locked away until the end of the world. And this is your fate. The camera finally settles on the deepest cell. There sits an armored undead, clearly different from the rest just by his appearance. He raises his head toward the ceiling, where a hatch opens. And a corpse is dropped down. A knight with a shield, his face unseen, gazes at the undead inside the cell. The screen went dark. The words Dark Souls appeared in the middle, and beneath them was a subtitle, Age of Fire. With the release of this trailer, all the players at the event instantly burst into excitement. Yes, this was exactly what they wanted. Even though the video wasn't very long, only about 3 minutes, it already revealed plenty of information. First of all, it showed the background of the Dark Souls world. In the previous Dark Souls, players could only pick up bits and pieces of information. But in this trailer, players finally saw what the Dark Souls world was like at the very beginning. They also came to understand the meaning of fire, and from some of the scenes in the trailer, they could make guesses. The timeline between the two games must be incredibly long, and you could tell that just from how fire was shown. In the trailer, the first flame looked like a massive sun. But in the ending of the previous game, when the fire was passed on, it had shrunk to a tiny spark, like it could be blown out at any moment. And with this trailer, many hardcore Dark Souls fans started coming up with more detailed theories. At the start of the world, souls already existed, but they were chaotic. The trailer said that the first flame brought differences and balance. That likely means it gave the souls certain traits, allowing the once chaotic souls to gather and take on new forms. These became the Lord Souls, and the beings who claimed them from the first flame were later called gods. They were the first to be touched by fire, the first to gain ordered souls. Because of these souls, their appearance and very existence changed, evolving into new forms. Then, the first beings to gain this power waged war against the everlasting dragons, who represented chaos, whether for survival, ambition, or other reasons. And so, the war between order and chaos began. In the end, with Seath the Scaleless's help, the side of fire won, order replaced chaos, and the Age of Fire began. From these characters, players could clearly see the roots of later game elements. Like Seath being tied to sorcery, Gwyn and the gods to faith, and the Witch of Izalith to pyromancy. As for the dwarf, that sparked huge debate. Because the trailer never showed the dwarf who gained the Dark Soul fighting in the Dragon War, and even though Dark Souls is a fantasy game, it doesn't have dwarves, elves, or the usual fantasy races. So what was this so-called dwarf? And what was the link between Londor's dark sign in the last game and the Ring of Darkness mentioned in the trailer? These became major questions for Dark Souls fans. Still, most players expressed one clear message: just give us the game, take our money, we'll buy it no matter what. As the trailer ended, countless players couldn't hold back their excitement and started discussing it right away. Story-focused fans were busy talking about the bits of lore revealed. Meanwhile, the ones who just loved fighting bosses were even more hyped. Just look at the names mentioned in the game. Gwyn, Lord of Sunlight, the Witch of Izalith and her Daughters of Chaos, Nito, the First of the Dead, every one of them was legendary. In the last game, players fought Lords of Cinder. Now they would take on the ancient gods themselves. How awesome was that? With their excitement at its peak, the players looked toward Lucas, stepping back onto the stage. Just like everyone can see, Dark Souls, Age of Fire will take the battlefield back to the distant ancient era, where players will experience an even more exciting and captivating Dark Souls. At the same time, I can also share some key information with you. The release date of Dark Souls, Age of Fire, is tentatively set for early July. As Lucas made the announcement, a date suddenly appeared on the big screen behind him. This time, Lucas wasn't bluffing. Based on the current progress, everything is more than ready. After all, this isn't being developed from scratch. With the framework from the previous game, the most time-consuming part has been the art resources. Hearing Lucas's words, the players on site erupted into cheers. Clearly, getting a release date filled them with excitement. Then, under the eager gazes of all the players, Lucas stepped down from the stage after saying a few typical event remarks, and the host of the event took his place. Wait a second, Lucas, did you forget to announce something? What about the Dark Souls, Age of Fire, demo? A lot of players looked completely confused as they watched Lucas leave, then turned to the host, who was now introducing the upcoming activities and content. But this time, Nebula Games didn't just show up with a single Dark Souls sequel trailer. There was still more content, like the new version and National War mode for Legends of the Three Kingdoms, as well as a new version of Fall Guys with various themed maps. There were also some activities prepared specifically for players, such as co-op play for It Takes Two, where you could win small collectible figurines as souvenirs. And there was a Dark Souls challenge event where players could fight different bosses and monsters. Whether you win or lose, you still get a souvenir figure. Then, as players looked at the showgirls and cosplayers performing on stage, they finally realized one thing. The so-called Dark Souls, Age of Fire, demo didn't exist at all. Unbelievable, Lucas really tricked us. Yeah, I thought there'd be a demo at the expo, but all we got was a trailer. Sure, the trailer showed quite a lot, and Lucas directly announced the release date, which really got me hyped, but where's the promised demo? Exactly, this feels like breaking a promise. Ahem, guys, calm down and check Lucas's official account. He never actually mentioned a demo anywhere. Damns, you're right. Although the lack of a demo left many players a bit disappointed, it wasn't a big deal. After all, it's not uncommon for expos to only show trailers without any playable demos. Plus, Lucas straight up revealed the release date for Dark Souls, Age of Fire. At least now they had something to look forward to. And honestly, the activities here were pretty lively. The prizes weren't expensive, but they were nicely made, which made many players feel that Nebula Games really valued its fans. Players can also download and try the test versions of new content released at the event, whether it's Legends of the Three Kingdoms or Fall Guys. Just like last year, there's no need for players to wait in line, which made many people happy and eased the disappointment of not getting to try a new Dark Souls demo before. Aside from that, events like the Dark Souls Challenge and the It Takes Two teamwork activity also drew large crowds. Ben, you're not lining up. Zach and Hannah were in line as they looked at Ben walking away, a bit curious. Not really, I just want to check out other games. Ben glanced at Zach and Hannah holding hands, then looked at the It Takes Two demo area ahead and forced a smile. Line up. Of course he wanted to play. The problem was, you can't play this game alone. It's been out for so long, and all he's done is watch videos. He hasn't played it once. Seeing all the couples holding hands around him, Ben took a deep breath. Can't look, my blood pressure's rising. Better find a game to calm down. He glanced at the Dark Souls demo area nearby, but quickly turned his eyes away. Then he noticed something strange. In a small corner of the Nebula Games booth, there were 4 wall-mounted monitors, and in front of them, 4 big water tanks with inflatable hammers inside. He had noticed this before, but thought it was just the Nebula Games staff area. Now it didn't seem that way. Curious, Ben walked over. Could it be Nebula Games' new project? End of the chapter, probably because, like Ben, everyone thought this was a staff-only area with cosplay props, so no one came over. Ben was the first to approach. With a staff member's guidance, he sat in the water tank sofa and zipped himself in. From the outside, it looked like half his body was inside the tank. A brand new game. He picked up the hammer, eyes wide with excitement. Because as soon as he grabbed the hammer, the monitor in front of him lit up. Then a Nebula Games logo appeared. A valley scene came into view, with a hammer hanging on a rock beside it. On the screen were 3 options: Start Game, Options, and Exit Game. Look at what he just found. A new game, what a surprise. Some nearby players also saw this scene and were all shocked. But when they noticed there were still 3 spots left, they all rushed over. Those who didn't manage to grab a spot lined up on the side. After hearing the staff's explanation, though, the players immediately started protesting. What's going on? Yeah, for a new game demo, there are only 4 slots, but why is the demo time so long? Exactly, half an hour per session is way too much. Yeah, so many people are lining up here. The players waiting in line weren't happy at all. From the staff, they learned that this unknown game had a demo session that lasted a whole half hour. That meant even the second person in line would have to wait 30 minutes. And there were only 4 spots. The problem was, the game actually looked pretty interesting. It even had motion controls, and the big hammer in their hands was the controller. It was obviously an action game. Smashing monsters with a big hammer would feel great. Noticing the commotion, Lucas came over. Lucas, fine, you don't have a new Dark Souls here, but why make the demo so long? Yeah, that's right. As soon as Lucas appeared, many players spoke up. Everyone, calm down first. The reason we set such a long session time is because this game is a bit special. It requires a certain level of control from players, and it also tests perseverance. That's why the demo time is longer, Lucas explained. He was telling the truth. How about this? Let's watch quietly for a bit. Just watch 10 minutes and you'll understand. This game needs some time before you can feel what makes it unique. That's why we want every player to have enough time to experience it properly, Lucas reassured them. After hearing Lucas, the players were still a bit unhappy, but they quieted down and focused on the booth. It even drew in some players who had been lining up for the Dark Souls challenge, and It Takes Two. As the staff managed to restore order, Lucas smiled, turned around and quietly stepped back. Meanwhile, Ben, the first to try, entered the game with excitement. But the scene that appeared next left him, and the players watching, stunned. Scattered stones on the ground, a dark pot-shaped thing, and a big hammer lying beside it. Then the pot began to shake, and a man climbed out from inside. A bald, muscular man with a stubble beard, his upper body covered in muscle. He gripped the hammer tightly with both hands. His look was quite similar to Ben himself outside the booth. This journey is way too hard, you'll never reach the top, you should just give up. At that moment, a cartoonish old man popped out of the ground, muttering complaints, just like the crestfallen warrior from Dark Souls. The game's control interface appeared on screen. Normally, you would just use a mouse, but here the hammer in Ben's hand replaced the mouse. But isn't this game way too simple? That's what the players watching thought to themselves. Still, no one said it out loud. After all, Lucas started out making indie games. Compared to Dark Souls and It Takes Two, his earlier games never had standout graphics either. Ben tried swinging the hammer in his hands. Since it was inflatable and only had a motion sensor inside, it wasn't heavy at all. The seat was custom-made and comfortable, giving him plenty of space to swing freely. As Ben swung, the muscular man in the game swung too. The gameplay wasn't complicated, just swing the hammer to move forward, backward, up, or down. But this game felt so strange. Not just Ben, even the players watching thought the same. The goal of the entire game was simple and clear: climb a mountain with the hammer. And the controls were just swinging the hammer. But unlike the players only watching, Ben quickly realized something different. The game was actually harder than it looked. Swinging the hammer to move forward sounded simple enough. But once he actually tried it himself, he realized it wasn't as easy as he thought. Especially with the first tree in front of him, he had to hook the hammer onto the branches and slowly flip over. But in the game, the hammer's point of force was way too sensitive. Every little movement showed up in the game. For example, if he swung the hammer hard and slammed it onto the ground, the rebound force would push the character up, almost like jumping. Or he could hook onto the edge of the trunk, pull hard, and flip over that way too. But knowing that was one thing, when he actually tried, the hammer just wouldn't obey. The hammer in his hands kept swinging around, but he was still stuck on this side of the tree, unable to get past. The other three players trying it out were basically in the same situation as Ben. Meanwhile, the players watching outside were finding it a bit funny. Because they were all sitting in these water jar-shaped sofas, swinging their hammer controllers, yet the characters in the game weren't going anywhere. The sight was actually pretty comical. This guy's been stuck here for 2 minutes. Everyone else is stuck too, guess it's really hard. No way, right, looks simple enough to me, just hook onto the edge and swing over. Hearing the whispers from the players around him, Ben's mouth twitched. He really wanted to say, if you think it's easy, you try it. But since he was a player who had beaten Dark Souls, he did have some gaming skill. After trying a couple more times, he finally made it past the first tree. Looking over at the others still stuck at the tree, Ben felt a little proud. He kept moving forward with the hammer, and by now, he had a rough idea of what kind of game this was. It was just a matter of getting through obstacles until reaching the end, right? The only difference was that the controls were all about swinging a giant hammer. But wasn't this game a little too easy? There wasn't much sense of urgency or pressure. Controlling the pot guy forward, Ben felt a little puzzled. Soon he reached a small canyon, and the next task was climbing. He could clearly see some protruding spots, which were obviously meant for players to hook their hammers onto for support. The controls are a bit weird, but actually it's not that hard. You just have to watch how much force you use when swinging the hammer, Ben summed up, while also noticing that the other 3 players had now cleared the first tree too. Yeah, it's a bit tricky, but once you get past it, it feels pretty good, another player nearby said. True, just like Dark Souls back then, with this kind of game you have to keep a good mindset, because it'll definitely get harder later, one player said with some feeling. Yeah, let's keep it up. Games should always be played with a smile, another added. Of course, you've got to play with a smile, Ben replied, and everyone seemed motivated. But soon they noticed something off. Why does the modeling in this game look so messy? A spectator asked, voicing what many were thinking. Because the scene in front of them looked strange. A house suddenly appeared on the mountain, with half of it sticking inside the rock. There were also things like concrete pipes from construction sites, which looked really out of place. It felt especially jarring. The overall art style seemed a bit odd too. Still, even though it looked strange, Ben and the others didn't really care. They just kept playing, after all they weren't stuck. Now they were on a steep, narrow slope, with a house, wood and rocks all serving as footholds. Swinging his hammer, Ben slowly climbed up, but one small mistake sent his character tumbling all the way back down, wiping out all the progress he had just made. Even so, Ben didn't overthink it or get discouraged. After all, that stretch wasn't too long. He just picked up the hammer and kept going. This time he was extra careful, hooking onto the edges bit by bit, finding stable points to climb. After making a mistake once, you just learn from it, like in Dark Souls, Ben said, glancing at the other 3 players' screens with a smile. One of them had reached the same height as him, while the other 2 were still stuck in the earlier area. Yeah, good luck, man, the player who was keeping up with Ben encouraged him with a grin. Calming his excitement, Ben kept controlling his character forward. Next was a pile of uneven rocks, leading into a narrow space. They needed to climb up onto a steel plate that looked like part of a construction crane. The path forward was especially tight. The 2 raised spots on the sides made the scene look a little awkward. Ben took a deep breath, slowly raised the hammer with both hands, then swung it down hard. In an instant, the strong man in the game leapt high into the air. Ben timed it just right and swung the hammer again, hooking onto the hanging point. He was ready to push through in one go and jump straight onto the steel platform. The next moment, with Ben's hammer swing, the man in the pot shot up into the air. According to Ben's plan, he should have landed on the steel platform, but in reality, his direction was off. He flew the opposite way. No, Ben shouted with wide eyes. But it was useless. Like a falling rock, the man in the pot dropped straight back down to the bottom of the valley. At the front was the same tree from the very start. Ben's mouth hung open slightly, his eyes frozen on the screen, his whole body stiff. Then in the game, that old man popped up from the ground again. Back again, I told you wouldn't make it, but I think you should listen to a song to relax. The game instantly started playing a BGM. As long as the heart is there, the dream is there. Win or lose, live with pride, it's nothing but starting all over again. Ben's hand holding the hammer trembled, his face looking blank. And then from the side came another surprised gasp. Ben looked over. That graceful falling curve, why did it feel so familiar? The other player stared at the screen showing the valley again, their face just as blank as Ben's. This time another BGM started playing. But it wasn't the same one Ben just heard. It was a new, unfamiliar melody. Back to the very beginning, the road where you first started in memory. At that moment, the group of players watching couldn't hold it in anymore. Even though they didn't want to laugh at someone else's pain, the scene was just too funny. Haha, I can't. This Lucas guy must have done it on purpose, right? I swear Lucas is cursed, this game is insane. No way it gets worse, right? Like falling all the way from the top or something. Judging by the way it's going, I think that might really happen. Damn, now I finally get why they said you need a 30-minute trial. 3 updates first, more later before 1:30. End of the chapter. Backstage at the Nebula Games booth, Lucas picked up a bottle of yogurt in his office, poked in the straw, and took a sip. Then he pulled out his phone, opened the workgroup chat, and tagged the on-duty staff at the company, asking them to put this little game onto the Nebula Games platform. As for the game's name, Lucas didn't bother thinking of something tricky. He simply called it Getting Over It. After all, it fit the gameplay and the ending animation perfectly. Before this, players online had been buzzing with envy, saying how lucky Expo visitors were to try out the new versions of Legends of the Three Kingdoms and Fall Guys, and even get the first look at the Dark Souls, Age of Fire trailer, since Lucas hadn't uploaded it online yet. But now this small game, made just to give Expo visitors a laugh, could at least let players online have some fun too. After all, they were all dear players, he couldn't play favorites. Just thinking about their expectant looks, Lucas couldn't bring himself to let them down. Meanwhile at the expo, Ben, who originally just wanted to find a game to lower his blood pressure, was already feeling unwell. He had returned to the starting point again, back to the same all-too-familiar high-altitude scene. And once more he fell, the background music even changed again. It was a catchy, almost brainwashing tune. Go home and visit often, visit home often. Hearing the fitting lyrics, Ben felt the deep malice of whoever made this game. So the special feature of this 30-minute trial was just this. This wasn't just tough, it was pure torture. And it wasn't like Dark Souls. At least Dark Souls was hard in a way that made sense. The stage design always had a solution if you figured out the trick. But this game, it made no sense at all. It only forced you to rely on muscle memory. The strength and angle of each hammer's swing had to be just right. One small mistake and you'd fall again. Ben quietly turned his head and glanced at the player beside him, who was also sitting in the same pot playing the game. Behind them, a crowd of players had gathered. Clearly, they had been drawn over just to watch. The onlookers were laughing happily, animatedly talking about their own game experiences. He fell again. The background music changed this time, pretty good. I prefer that one with the line about success or failure and living boldly. Feels more epic. But honestly, compared to the game itself, it's all the same thing. Hey, why's this guy not moving? Probably can't handle the frustration, this game is brutal. Hearing the chatter behind him, Ben couldn't help but nod in agreement. Yes, his fragile heart really couldn't take much more. This simple game even gave him flashbacks to when he tried Silent Hill PT. And the guy next to him, who had just told him to stay positive and play with a smile, was now falling from the peak again. Sure, he was smiling, but he was also howling. A bit too loudly, actually. As he fell, his face turned red. Gaia. The desperate cry was almost impossible to understand. Is it really that hard? Doesn't seem that hard to control, right? Just swinging a hammer to climb. Some new players who had just arrived, and only now figured out the simple-looking gameplay, were puzzled. From the outside, it really didn't look too tough. As long as you kept the right distance, shouldn't it be easy? Ben's grip on the inflatable hammer was so tight his veins were popping out. He forced down his emotions, put on a gentle smile, climbed out of the pot, and turned to the player who said it was easy. Friend, I've played for quite a while, why don't you give it a try? But I haven't even lined up yet. The player froze. He had only come to watch the fun. Sure, he wanted to try the game, but he hadn't actually queued. Hearing what he said, the players nearby all spoke up one after another. Go ahead, don't worry about us. Yeah, this must be your first time at Lucas's booth, right? We're all players here, it's no big deal, you go first. Exactly, from your accent, you're not from Magic City, are you? Coming all this way to the game show isn't easy, so go ahead and play. Right, everyone in line make some space. Let this brother try the game first. The players around him all smiled and acted generous. The player being helped felt warm inside. The people in this booth were so kind. With a grateful look he said, "Thanks, everyone, I'll just play for a few minutes." In the end, under everyone's kindness, the player couldn't hold back anymore. No, don't rush, play as long as you want. Yeah, exactly, you could play until the show closes, we'll just watch. Yep, that's right, we actually enjoy watching others play. The group behind him waved their hands quickly. And soon, some new players who had just walked over, without knowing what was going on, also got pulled into this. Before long, the 4 players controlling the barrels and hammers were replaced by new faces. Even though Ben and his group hadn't finished their own turns yet, they stepped aside without hesitation. They even patiently explained how the game worked. To make it even better, they restarted the game so the new players could get the full experience from the beginning. Sitting in front of the screens, the new players felt really moved. There really are good people everywhere. The players here at Lucas's booth were nothing like those at the other booths. Full of joy and gratitude, they began their journey of swinging giant hammers. But 10 minutes later, strange sounds started coming from that side. Someone let out a sharp scream, "No, don't." Another shouted like an elephant, "Ah, damn it." The players who had given up their spots, along with the crowd watching, all burst out laughing at the sight. Yes, they hadn't lied at all. They really did enjoy watching others play this game. Look how fun this was, way more fun than playing themselves. At the same time, the pig-like screams rising one after another started drawing in nearby players. This made them curious. What was going on here? Wasn't this just a game? Why did it sound like pigs being slaughtered? Could it be some horror game? They glanced at the booth. Did Lucas bring Silent Hill PT to the show? Driven by curiosity, more and more players walked over to check it out. Meanwhile, other game companies in Hall 3 looked at the massive crowd around Nebula Games, completely dumbfounded. What was happening? Hadn't they heard before that Nebula Games didn't have any big surprises this year? Wasn't there no demo for the new Dark Souls game? So why was everyone rushing over there? End of the chapter. The whole gameplay expo lasted 4 days, just like last year. Unlike last year, when Skynova and NetDragon both showed off their brand new VR blockbusters, this year the only big game players were looking forward to was the news about Dark Souls, Age of Fire. But that wasn't what people ended up talking about the most. What really shocked many companies and gaming media was that this year's show had a bit of déjà vu. Last year, Skynova and NetDragon's VR titles should have been the stars of the show. But back then, Nebula Games stole all the attention with Fall Guys and Legends of the Three Kingdoms. This year, almost everyone assumed that Nebula Games' new Dark Souls news would be the highlight of the first day. But to everyone's surprise, Nebula Games only brought a short trailer for Dark Souls, Age of Fire. The thing that actually drew all the attention was a rough-looking, hammer-swinging game. It might have been rage-inducing to play, but watching others play it was pure entertainment. Especially on the day of the expo, this game was already launched on the Nebula Games platform. In just a few short days, thanks to its showing at the expo and some media coverage, this game, which had no promotion and was even free, suddenly became the center of attention on streaming and video platforms. It wasn't that the game was actually being played by as many people as Fall Guys once was. It was simply that its popularity exploded. On streaming platforms, almost the very next day after the expo, this rough little game called Getting Over It spread like wildfire. At first, it was mostly fans spamming chat, asking their favorite streamers to download and try it. That made many streamers curious. Then they quickly understood what their viewers were really up to. And once several streamers started playing it live, naturally more and more joined in. Before long, streaming platforms were filled with cries of pain and screams of frustration. Clicking into almost any stream of the game showed all kinds of reactions. Dear viewers, they say this hammer game is hard, but today I'll show you, nothing is impossible if you put your mind to it. If we keep trying, we'll get results. What, you're saying I'll never clear it? No way, don't worry, I'll definitely clear it. In one stream, a streamer spoke very seriously while playing. The most important thing in hammering is controlling your strength, As the saying goes, a big swing is 80, a small swing is 40. That's not just about the hammer itself, but the force you use. So you can't rush this game. See, I just climbed up the mountain easily. You really can't rush. The whole point of this game is to break your mindset. If your mindset collapses, then you'll never clear it. So we need to keep calm. Viewers, watch this move closely. Don't rush, hook it and push. No problem, don't rush. Keep calm. Always smile when you play. Mistakes once or twice are normal. We just climb again, right? Remember my words, your mindset must be good. You must smile while playing. Hook it. Go RAF / asterisk big slash asterisk big slash asterisk. Hate this game. With that furious outburst came the sound of slamming the table, like smashing cucumbers. Besides the streamers who seemed to enjoy suffering, lots of regular players also downloaded it to try. After all, with so many streamers playing, many players got curious too. And on the surface, this kind of game looked really simple. How hard could it be? Just use your right hand, right? It's just a hammer-swinging game, right? I'll try it myself. That was what most players thought. They believed they were surely better than the streamers, that the streamers were just pretending to be dumb for laughs, and the game wasn't actually that hard. Plus, since the game was free, there was nothing to lose. At worst, it was just another freebie in their library, no refunds needed. So even though many knew it was a game designed to frustrate, players still kept flooding in. But after downloading it and playing for just 10 minutes, with that perfectly mocking background music playing, almost 90% of players ended up saying only one thing: screw this clam game, get off my computer. Then they angrily deleted it. Many left the lowest rating possible. And their reviews were very simple. Things like "I'm an idiot," or just long strings of censored swearing, showing their raw emotions. Of course, some players purposely left 5-star reviews, hoping to trick more people. This game is amazing. I've been screaming while playing, but now my blood pressure is low and my mood is calm. By the way, I'm very thankful to Lucas. This game brought me back my childhood joy. So I want to ask, where does Lucas live? I'd like to thank him in person. A very simple and fun game, brought me lots of joy. I really hope more people can experience it. Great tool. My son loved playing games and hated studying, so I downloaded Hammer Your Way Up for him. I told him every fall means he has to do one practice question. Now he's already been accepted to Tsinghua and Peking University. Thanks, Lucas. I've always wanted to replace my mouse but couldn't bring myself to. Now this game finally made me do it. Anyway, I need to bury my old mouse with honor now. The funny reviews made Lucas at Nebula Games laugh out loud. Even though the game was released for free and didn't count toward the platform's points system, that didn't matter much. After all, for this kind of game, even if it cost money, hardly anyone would play. Selling it as a paid title was out of the question. Letting players enjoy the fun it brought, that alone meant Lucas had already reached his goal. And it's not without benefits. At least with the buzz around this game, the Nebula Games platform has drawn in a big wave of traffic. But the players' misunderstanding about him is just getting deeper and deeper. Seeing online players dig up that old interview GameSpace did with Lucas after the release of It Takes Two, Lucas couldn't help but sigh. The report had some key phrases highlighted, like heartwarming and filled with love for players. Then players quietly posted screenshots of Silent Hill PT and getting over it. Countless players jumped into the comments roasting him. Lucas, this is your love for the players. Looking at all the online chatter and jokes, Lucas just let out another sigh. Then he quietly opened his official blog and posted a long message. Actually, getting over it isn't just a game designed to make people rage quit. Yes, the design is harsh, but it's not unbeatable. Sure, some players give up in frustration along the way, but there are also players who, after suffering, after crying, pick up the hammer again and start over. If you think about it, isn't that just like life? Every swing of the hammer is like making a decision in life. There's no undo button, only lessons learned, and all we can do is keep moving forward on an unknown path. On that path we may fail, we may face setbacks, even lose everything we worked for. But just like in the game, there's no save file. Even if we fall and break ourselves, all we can do is dust ourselves off and climb again. And the character in the game, aren't they just like us in real life? So now, are you willing to try again, to overcome those hardships, whether in real life or in the game? The moment Lucas posted this, countless players were stunned. So this game actually has deep philosophical meaning. It sounded convincing, but most players were like, "Lucas, you've got to be kidding us." Especially that last line, "Are you willing to try?" Does that even need an answer? Countless players stared at Lucas's post and quietly typed 4 words in the comments section. Next time for sure. That's it for today, Mori tomorrow. End of the chapter. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and like the video and comment down if anything wrong in the story.